after school is just insane with activities. So I just bring my laptop. I work around it.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello, my name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo is interviewing Gabriella Ribeiro of the Mogul Mom. Jo saw Gabriella on a podcast directory and knew she'd make a great guest. Gabriella is a serial entrepreneur, author, single mother, frequent global wanderer and head of the Mogul Mom. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Gabriella Ribeiro of the Mogul Mom. Welcome, Gabriella, great to have you with me.
Thanks for having me here.
Lovely. So start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you do, and crucially, where you do it.
Sure. Well, I am based in New Jersey. I work from home, and I'm a firm believer in that. So I'll start with that. I run
Lovely. Good.
Most of my businesses revolve around travel and tourism. But what I recently did was take over the helm at the Mogul Mom, which is a global sort of a motivational and supportive community for women, more specifically moms, that want to get back in the workforce on their terms. So maybe become an entrepreneur and such. So we help guide them. And just a very far too frequent traveler, global wanderer. I have a little girl. I'm a single mom. And I'm a writer. Yeah.
Lovely. How old's your little girl?
Oh, she's 10. Not so little. She'll be a baby for me forever.
I was just little Dodsy, as I used to call her, who's now the same height as me. He's off sick from school at the moment, so she just came downstairs and I was like, give me a hug. And then I was like, you're supposed to be my little girl. You're only 12. And she's like the same height, possibly even a centimetre or two taller than me. She's determined. She's taller than me. And not so little anymore. They grow up too quickly, as they say.
Yeah, they do.
So tell us how you got to do what you do. So it's interesting when I sort of talk to my guests, I have so many situations where I think about how we talk about our children doing jobs that sort of half the jobs they'll do in the future we don't know exist at the moment, because or rather they don't exist at the moment. And that always sounds like quite a high percentage until I interview my guests. And actually most of the people I interview didn't grow up saying, I want to be whatever it is that they're now doing. So it's probably not that unreasonable to say that half the jobs in the future don't currently exist. So tell us about your journey to where you are now, what you wanted to do, how you ended up doing what you now do.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. And I think when you have a passion, something just finds you. And maybe that job doesn't exist now, or maybe, there'll be intonations of it in the future. But it's what the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is it's whatever you want it to be. So it doesn't matter if it exists or not, you can create it. No, I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I wanted to be a TV news producer, all sorts of different things. And, I took a job when I graduated college just because my dad was in tourism. We always traveled. We were a heavily traveling family. And just said, take this for now, while you pursue your dream, okay. And it was amazing because the job just kind of kept getting better and better as far as access to the world, getting control of an understanding of how to market and advertise products, things like that. And so I stayed for a few years in an office. I figured out I really hate working in an office, so that was crucial for me. And had an opportunity to sort of start my own thing. So I took it and ran with it, and I figured, I can always, figure stuff out, and I could always go back to that company, if I wanted to, which, fortunately didn't have to. And I think, I started a business, which, at that time it was interesting that a lot of those kind of companies I started didn't really exist, where we sort of took on roles as directors of sales and marketing for hotels and travel companies that are not based here in the US. So sort of becoming, marketing ourselves as an extension of an already existing brand. And it just started to work well, and one account led to another, and here I sit. So it's been nearly 20 years that I've been doing that. And since then, so many different things have spun off of it. I've started to plan really crazy travel for people. I started another company doing that because that's my passion, is not traveling in the ordinary, but giving people the extraordinary when they see the world. And then I had an opportunity to sort of take over at the Mogul Mom, because I've always really championed entrepreneurs, and I celebrate entrepreneurship, especially being a mom and now being a single mom. It is really hard, and you have to find a tribe, and you have to find a system that suits you, and also just a supportive circle, because when you become a mom, this happens. Sometimes you take time off of work, your circle changes. And if you're not in the workforce, people rarely understand your dreams and what you want to do. So that just seemed like a good kind of, fit for me to sort of, look at seeing how I could help people while I work like mad. And that's pretty much, where I am. So none of this was planned. I couldn't have even envisioned this. But, I think when you have a passion, it finds its way to you, and it's really about what you do with it.
Yes, yeah. So I'm interested in the sort of working mum thing, because there's obviously, lots of activity discussion around being a working mum, and in particular working sort of entrepreneurial mum with your own business. And I've sort of always avoided it on the basis that I had one child, and I've been fortunate in that I live next door to my in-laws. Well, fortunate most of the time. And so Granny and Grandad, have been next door. And so that's 4 people to bring up one child. So I've never really sort of put myself out there as this person who's, managing and balancing being a mum and running a business, because firstly, I started my business so I could have my daughter. It wasn't something that sort of evolved from having had her in the first place. I did it on purpose. But I've always sort of felt like I'm a bit of a fraud if I go out there saying, I'm a working mum, because I sort of think, well, there's so many people supporting her that I probably don't qualify, really.
No, not at all. It doesn't matter what your level is of. So, we all need the support, but really, if you're doing the work, then that's to be commended.
I do some of it. But what's the sort of, I can't think of a better word other than thing around the sort of working mum community, because it's clearly people, in a sort of having a business sort of way or working way. It's about the working, but it is about being a mum at the same time. But it's almost like a sort of just a place to identify yourself and then build relationships. Or is it actually because it's about, being a mother? It's not that bit, is it?
No, I think it's, I think a lot of women struggle with work, no matter what, whether they have kids yet or don't have kids. There's, gender issues, pay gaps, and all of that, and that's a real thing. So I think already, we start with a little bit of a struggle. But what I find, especially people who join our community, is they've dipped out of the workforce to raise their children, which is an extremely admirable thing. And if you can do it, wonderful. But I find so many of them get to this point where they're just so itchy to get back to something that makes them feel good, and it's wonderful to be a mom. It's wonderful to be a full-time mom. But as I mentioned, when your circles change and you're not, the longer you're not around people in the working world, the harder it becomes to get back. It doesn't matter how much help you have. It doesn't matter, if you've got everybody or nobody. You start to feel that little bit of a, it's almost like a depression in some ways that I see from people. So they're saying, what's my value now? What do I do? Where do I help out, aside from the home? And I think that's a struggle that a lot of people deal with. And also when you have a child, and you'll know this, even whether, it sounds like you have great help, but still, everything, it just changes, and you cannot really be a 9 to 5, and that doesn't suit most of us. It certainly doesn't suit me. I'm like 24/7, but with taking breaks to be a mom, so I think it's more crucial than ever for, especially moms who want to go back and work. It has to sort of be on their terms, especially if they don't have, the grandparent living next door. They don't even have people in their immediate circle. You know what I mean? It's hard to find people to bond with that you trust with your child. So I think it's more important than ever these days that they find, either they do their own thing or they find a job that works with their schedule so they can still be mom.
Because it's not that common now to have family so close and have that sort of support that was so common in previous generations, really, is it? So So do you have men in your group, and
In the
do you have non-mothers in your group? I'm just intrigued.
No, we welcome everybody, so anybody really can like participate. But no, we don't find too many men. Like lots of times, I'll interview a man that's really interesting, like in the business world or has done something. So for sure, yeah. But I think it's just most of the stuff that we talk about and that people open up about. Women can probably relate to a little bit better. So I mean, certainly we don't exclude anybody, but if you might be more interested if you're there and you're a female.
Yes. Yeah.
And we do have women that are not moms, absolutely, because like I mentioned, everybody who is doing their own thing is sort of struggling. There's a lot of battles that go on, especially when you launch your business. So they need the support. And then some people are really, they're younger and they are not yet mothers, and they're sort of like, wow, well, what are we going to do when everything changes? How am I going to? So we sort of almost serve as spotlights and mentors for those that are thinking about becoming a mom, but are not yet there. So I think it serves them well also.
Yeah. So you have a lot on your plate. You apart from having the Mogul Mum, you also do other stuff, as you've said. You have a daughter. How do you make sure you get things done, but also that you get to do the things that you want to do as well?
I think it's important to identify which hours work best for you and then kind of work around that. So what I do pretty much every day is I get up really early. I perform very, very well in the morning as opposed to being a night owl. I'm certainly not. So, getting up early allows me to do exercise, which I kind of have to do for health reasons. It also allows me to kind of have my coffee, check in, and most of my clients really are around the world. So, if it's already 4 or 5 in the morning here, it's already 9 or 10 in Europe, and it's way, way later in Asia. So I have to adjust myself accordingly to what my work demands. And once you get used to it, it's fine. And then this way I have some hours to myself before my daughter gets up. And when she does, I'm sort of just all in with her. And then, while at school, she's working, I'm working, she's there. And then after school is just insane with activities. So I just bring my laptop. I work around it, or I carpool or whatever the case may be. I'm always with her and present when we can have dinner together, that kind of thing. But I just take it as it goes. At night, if there's time and I'm still awake after a 4 or 5 a.m. wake up, then I do a little bit of work again. And that's that. And I also travel really heavily for work. So on that, talk about support. I really do lean on family and friends to assist. I am fortunate. My mother does live very close and she's a tremendous help. And her dad is super helpful as well. We're not together, but, he's a wonderful dad. So he can definitely help step in. And it just kind of works like that. Every day is a little bit different though.
It's that whole flexibility piece, isn't it? We were in France for a few days. My mother-in-law and her sister, and I was sort of designated driver because I don't like driving abroad. And we have friends who live literally, we're sort of 24 miles from them or something, but there happens to be the English Channel between us and we speak different languages. And they always say that I work too much. I'm always on my computer, and I always sort of go back to them and say, well, actually, that's because when we're in the car driving somewhere, that's a great time for me to get on and sort my emails out or do something that I need to get done, so that I can get out of the car and go for a nice walk with you when we get there, because I have done my work. And, if I was working in a 9-to-5 job, I wouldn't even be here. But as it is, we were there for 3 days. I got tons of work done, but I also spent a lot of time sightseeing, having nice lunches. They lunch for hours in France, and, seeing our friends and so on. And it's interesting because they see my wraparound work, they think that's all I do. And it's like, well, if that was all I do, I wouldn't be seeing you, would I?
Right. I think, people always are very quick to give flack to people that have to pop up and, pitch up and work. However, it's a beautiful thing that we can, but that's what they happen to see. And then I get accused of that all the time. And I'm like, oh, you're always on your phone. It's like, well, hold it. It's just, an email or two. Let me clear this out, but like if I was hidden and in an office, you would have no idea what I was doing, and quite right. I wouldn't be able to be present with you.
No, exactly. And it's, it is, the other thing I said to them was, I really like my work actually. So, and because they sort of go, oh, do you work when you're on holiday? And so, well, I sort of work at any given time. To me, it's living my life. It doesn't really count as holiday per se, because I have days during the week when I'm what everyone else would call supposed to be working, when, I might go off and have a massage or something. That's just something that is able to be fitted in around everything because of that flexible way of working. But it doesn't get perceived that way sometimes, does it?
No, it doesn't.
So what about sort of tools and apps to get that work done? You talked about you being on your phone, and the smartphone, I think, for me is one of the best inventions in the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you use to keep you on top of all the different things that you need to do?
Well, I mean, just standard social media is really, really important for what I do. Just, as far as like staying visible with the marketing that I do, it's an incredible tool for not only putting things out there, but also curating specialty groups, private groups, member-based groups. That's a thing that didn't exist, or even a couple of years ago. And now people are finding different ways to monetize, with that tool and all sorts of it. So I think that's been amazing. And I do use it. I probably spend too much time on it, but social media for me has become, a really important part of how we project our messages in all of the businesses that I run, but also creating community, which is what people crave. So I think that has been incredibly more so helpful there than anything. And I'm kind of really loyal to a couple of fitness apps, and I find like that you need, it doesn't have anything to do with work, but I mean, in a way it does. You have to stay mentally balanced, whatever that is that helps you. Like you said, whether it's massage, mani-pedi, whatever. For me, it's knowing I hit my calorie count that day or whatever it is, So I use that to sort of, keep myself, in check on the self-care side, which is a huge component, of being a business owner and a mom and a friend and everything else. And, like little tools I use here and there, I'd say, I'm kind of a stickler with my Google Calendar. Like if it's not in there, it definitely doesn't exist. So that's a number one. And I always have to have kind of Wi-Fi connection wherever I go. So I have this device. It's a brand called Solis, and it's really amazing, and it works pretty much around the world because I travel around the world pretty frequently. I'm leaving for Italy in a few hours actually.
Cool.
So yeah, I've got to always have that thing in my bag because exactly what we said. You just had a power cut or things go out. I need to be connected, and people say, like, it's funny that you said, people say, oh, don't you ever disconnect? My stress is being totally disconnected.
Yes.
You'll never find me in a good state if I can't, connect. So I am in my best, I'm living my best life when my phone is on fully charged. I admit it because I know that things and I can stay responsible.
Yeah, no, I agree. This morning I had a bit of a heavy morning. I had to get the tyres changed on my caravan, which is what you call, I think you call them trailers over there, but it's a small sort of one that you tow around with you. It's not, static. So I had to change that because I'm off to Scotland at the weekend. And but I also needed to get my husband's phone screen fixed because it was smashed, and I also needed to get the battery on my phone replaced. So the guy that was doing that work actually lives right near where the caravan was getting sorted. So I thought, oh, brilliant, I'll do the both things. But I had to get back for my podcast, so I only had a limited window. And then the man doing the tyres was going to call me when he was half an hour away. So I'm thinking, well, I can't give my phone to the fixer. I can give my husband's phone to him, but I can't give him my phone because I need to get the call from the tyre person, and I need to let him in the gate when he gets here. So I'm doing all this, and then I'm saying to the guy, and in the end, so it sort of worked out, and I gave him my phone, and then I had to go to his house to pick the phone back up again. But of course, I didn't have Google Maps anymore, so I couldn't actually remember how to get to his house because he lives in one of those estates where all the roads look the same and they're all like interconnected. So after taking a few wrong turnings and driving around a little while, I finally got to him. But I was quite worried for about an hour that I was so disconnected to everybody. But not luckily, pre-planning, I took my iPad. So if I had got really lost, I could have texted him on the iPad to find out where he lived.
I know. Or use Google Maps. Tell stories like that. People get so crazy all the time. I hear how many people, it was so much better when we didn't have all this technology. It's like, I fully disagree, actually. I think it helps us perform better so that we can, give ourselves extra time or get a bunch of things done so we can be more present with people.
Well, yeah, and prime example is I've got 4 podcasts today. You're my third, and I've got another one coming up later. And I've just, as you said, mentioned briefly, I've had a power cut, which cut us off, and we've had to sort of continue. And we're doing that via my iPad because I can't have the internet because that's now not plugged in because there is no power. And for some reason, my portable internet's not working either. So that must be connected in some way. But luckily, my iPad, well, I keep saying luckily, it's pre-planning really. I can use that instead. Otherwise, we would have had to have rescheduled. You're off to Italy. I'm off to Scotland. It would have been really difficult. But as it is, we've managed to get around it. Yeah, exactly. Excellent. So tell us a bit more about the being healthy, keeping sort of fit for what you do, because you in passing said that you need to exercise for your health, and you've talked a bit about your health apps being quite key for you. Is that something that you focus on, that needs to be right in order to enable you to do the things that you want to do?
Yeah, it is. I keep, setting challenges for myself. So that's good, good to have like sort of the mental goal. But my dad died at a very young age, had a stroke and diabetes and heart disease and all of that. So that was really difficult, in so many regards, to see that and to be subject to that and, and all of the aftermath when he was a parent earlier in life. And, and now that I'm a single mom, it's more important than ever. It's not even a vanity thing. Of course, we all want to lose weight, but, that's the secondary. I just kind of want to stay as agile as I can for as long as I can, and nothing else really for her, outside of myself. And so I think it's important that I stick to a curriculum. Once I backslide, it's really difficult to get back into it. So I say like, okay, rather never lose it, just whether, it may, twist and turn here and there. But what I do to keep myself on track also is, I set goals for myself now, whether they're races or, marathons or these types of things. And then I know, I kind of put myself out there. I hold myself accountable to the world so that like, I'm not going to back out. And all I ever have to do is finish. I'm not an athlete. I'm not any sort of superior or anything. Like I got brains, but I did not get, the athleticism. That's what I got. And so I think it's kind of funny. Like, I just think it's a big goof. Like, I always hated running, for example, and now I can, do a marathon, and I have another one scheduled this year. It never could have happened, before, but all I want to ever do is just finish. So that's my goal. If I can cross the finish line in, 6 hours, 7, whatever it is, then that keeps me fresh mentally as well as physically.
Mm-hmm. So sort of changing the subject back to talking about the Mogul Mum and your community there. Are there certain sort of top sort of challenges, issues that come up time and again for the people in that community, the things that people are mostly asking questions around, or is it sort of anything and everything? All right.
Yeah,
I imagine there must be some common themes.
We do a nice divide between the personal and the professional, and I think that's what people need. Like a lot of people join these groups and it's just 100% business, and they don't bond with anyone and they don't feel close enough to share something personal. So I think I try to keep a good balance there. But yeah, what comes up all the time is mom guilt. 100% of the time. That is what like 90, everybody, almost everybody has commented on that in some way. So I think, everybody suffers from it, whether they're public about it or not. You always feel like you want to do more, like, and that you're not doing enough. So I think the self-doubt and the self-pity almost happens too often, I think people, don't bring up too many issues with their kids. I think everything is generally pretty going okay there. But I think also like they question family buy-in, and I always say that that's a really important thing. Like some people don't bring their partner or their kids into what they're doing, and it's like you were saying before, like somebody's just judging you because you're on your laptop in the car. They don't really know the bigger picture. They probably couldn't even really remember what it is exactly you do, and I think sometimes that people struggle with that, like how much should I let people in on my family, on my business and all of that stuff, and just all the way, because I think if they don't understand why it is that you're doing what you're doing and how happy it makes you, or what sacrifices need to be made for you to achieve your goals, whether it's you have to go out to a meeting or you've got to go to a night function and, all of that stuff. If they don't really get it, then that's what creates confusion and resentment. So I think that's definitely something that comes up a lot that we talk about. And I always encourage people to make a family meeting, make sure they understand, I have to travel a lot, which gives me, a lot of guilt. Probably I've managed it better now than I did in the past, but it's just my trade-off because I get to be mom the rest of the time at home, and I get to be at her activity and stuff. But lots of times I take her with me, and I'll take her to a meeting if it's a fun client or, something like that if it's appropriate. And she'll kind of totally get what I'm doing. She may not understand the logistics, but she's like, oh, okay, I understand now. This is why you have to go away. You had to be at this meeting, or you had to come to this trade show, or whatever it was. And it sort of gives her a little bit more of a glimpse into my day and helps her understand. So I think that's something to always be conscious of.
I think it's interesting. I know I've been on holiday with family members where people have needed to only do half the holiday, and my husband's done that. He's come for a week instead of 2 weeks, and that's sort of accepted as normal because they have a job and they can only take certain amounts of time off, and all that sort of thing. And then I've had to do something, and it's seen as my decision. And it's interesting that, as you say, it's about people being aware, because a lot of the decisions you make when you run your own business are just as necessary, and you can't not do them, as things are when you work for an employer. It just looks like it's your sort of decision and your fault, or whatever the sort of perception of it is. But quite often it's because a client needs something, so you have to do it because it's a client, or you've got a deadline that is a deadline, for your business. But I suppose when it's your own business, sometimes it can look like, well, it's just because you're choosing to do that. And that's the key bit of making people aware of what is expected of you, or what you expect of yourself, because you are running a business and need to do whatever you need to do to earn that money.
Yeah, no, quite right. We're very much beholden to deadlines and things just like anybody else. So exactly.
Yeah. So what about learning and improving yourself? What sort of things do you do to keep yourself sort of abreast of what's happening in the marketplace and in the business world in relation to what you do?
I read a lot, and I make sure that I'm present at a lot of industry events where I'm going to learn something. So especially in the travel industry, there are frequently so many events all over the world that I have to go to, but I attend some that I actually want to go to. And those are the ones that, for instance, will have innovators and disruptors in the industry, or they'll have technological products that have just come online, that you'll have the chance to try out, or, meet the founders of and ask your questions. I think that stuff is important because when you work from home, your human interaction becomes, sometimes minimal to nil, depending on what you do. It's important to balance that. So, I'm required to go to a lot of different events on behalf of clients around the world, which is good because that keeps, even if I did nothing else on myself, I'd always have that. But I kind of like to keep fresh and attend events that where I know I'll be able to network well, I'll be able to meet some interesting people, and kind of keep a finger on the pulse of what other people are doing. I really enjoy kind of hearing other entrepreneurs speak, and also founders of different technologies that I think could help me. So that's always interesting.
And how do you turn that sort of learning into practical sort of action? I was talking to someone the other day where we were talking about how important it is to apply what we learn. Otherwise, sometimes we can just keep learning. And in fact, I interviewed somebody for one of the podcasts today, and he talked about what was the phrase? Learning. Something like if you don't apply what you learn, then the learning is a booby prize. And I can't remember how he quite described it, but as in the learning becomes really useless if you then don't use it.
I agree, and I'm very much the type of person that does things on a whim. And I think it's kind of it's not exactly the same explanation, but I just it sort of ties in. I think it's important to stop dragging your feet. And I think that's what happens when you say people don't put things into practice. It's because they got home and they put the notebook down and they wanted to watch TV, or they wanted to do something, and then the idea just stayed in the notebook. And that happens a lot. Finding ways not just to test out what you learn, but also to take the time to figure out how that best works for you, and how can maybe you twist it up. If I hear someone talking about a concept, it may not totally work for me, or whatever tools they're using may not, but most of the time I try to twist it around in my head and say, well, I can't do that, but I could do something with one of the groups I have this way, and test it out with what membership site, or it could be like something as simple as a wait list. The power of a wait list is enormous. I've learned that this past year, and maybe I didn't have at that time. I saw a tremendous speaker that talked about that, and it's so true. People want what they can't get. And, I was like, well, what do I have? What could I really do? And if I run a membership group, in a motivational group, and I'm like, why couldn't I try that? So, people, I think you have to also look at what what doesn't cost so much money? You know, like the idea of putting a wait list on a new thing I was launching was fairly easy. So it's like people have to get out of their own way too. I think that that's more important than applying the lesson, because I think what stops people is saying, I have to focus on the pixel. My friend always says, don't focus on that. Like you could lose months to a year delaying a launch of a website because you can't decide whether the logo should go on the left or right. And I'm sure you know people like this. And, you know, it's like nothing really, nothing that bad can happen if you just test something out and launch it. So I think it's more like getting your mindset straight before you can even, you know, it's that self-acceptance and self-push to be like, you know, I got this and I'm going to figure it out by the weekend. And that's just what I'm going to do, you know, and sticking to a deadline, not so much the initiative, but, you know, just the promise you make to yourself.
It's that thing about sort of getting going and correcting your route as you go, rather than actually just, as you say, waiting until everything's perfect before you even start, because that is just so hard to do and doesn't get you anywhere anyway.
No, it's never going to be perfect. So, and then even when you think it is, something else will happen.
Exactly. One of my key phrases, done is better than perfect. So yes, I go along with that.
I'm sure you've never regretted launching something on time or when you felt it was right. You know, it's just, you can always change things midstream. Yeah. You always have the power. Yeah.
So last couple of questions then. The first one is, what do you do on those days where it all goes horribly wrong and you've had a bad day and things haven't worked out?
You know what I do is I breathe, which we forget to do. And I've really gotten into some guided meditations, which have helped me, where, you know, I just kind of reset and say, all right, you know what, if it's something, I'm the type of person that has to get things out. If I have something to say to you, you're going to hear it, you know, and and we're going to be fine. Either we're not going to be okay or we will, but, you know, it's not going to escalate to something ridiculous. So, you know, I think clear communication is key, you know. So I say, if it's something that really stinks, but can I fix it? Is it something I could pick up the phone and talk about? Then at least that's taking action. You know, if it's a circumstance I really can't change, you know, or I get a report that, you know, one of my clients' business levels are not doing so well, and it of course reflects back on us, I just kind of pick up and walk away. And sometimes I say, all right, I'm just going to take the rest of the day and I'm going to think about this away from my desk. And usually that helps me be able to come up with a solution. When I'm sitting there and staring at the screen, I almost feel more pressure. You know, and sometimes it takes something as simple as just a walk around the block, you know, to say, okay, this is how I see it here, and here's what I'm going to fix. So I think always I focus on a solution no matter what, because I think that there is for pretty much everything. And maybe get out of your own space for a second just to see it differently. And also, you know, I've been learning to do this and I'm not good at it, but realizing and the capacity to understand that people will always have their own perspective. Yes. And you got to change things. You're not always right. I mean, you may be right in your head, you know, and you may be right to a stranger looking at it objectively. But it's, you know, you have to kind of sort of see where the other person is coming from, even if it might be ridiculous, and figure out, you know, how best to navigate it. Because, you know, if you can do that, you're already a smarter person than your opponent, you know. So I think, you know, figuring out how to navigate it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And then lastly, those days where you've had the chance to live more, and that's where I talk about getting to do more of the things that you want to do. And in fact, I read something the other day, a newsletter that I wrote years ago, and I've found out where the live more bit came from, and I'd forgotten. So I'm just going to say it because it's a really lovely little reference. It's Pollyanna. From the books. She used to talk about living more, and I read them with Ellie a few years ago, and I must have picked it up from there, and that's where it came from. So the living more is doing the things that you want to do. So where you've had that day where you've lived more, what does it look like for you?
It looks like that I've had a really good laugh. It looks like my invoices are paid from clients, and I don't have to spend half the day chasing. I've had an adventure with my girl, and, you know, and that's really kind of what I measure things by. The other night, we're always running, and I always travel with her, and we're always kind of like, you know, going on errands and this and that and activities. And the other night, we just kind of sat down, and it's the summer and it's super fun. We just colored. We colored for like 3 hours, and it was awesome. It was, first of all, that I could do that. You know, when I had the flexibility to do that, and, you know, just be summer. But, you know, also that I'm so blessed to be able to just integrate the quality time when I can, and just truly, indulge in that, because at the end of the day, it's, I go all over the world, I get great opportunities, I have a lot of fun, and that's all great, but believe me, but I think it's those moments where you kind of go back and say, wow, that was a really amazing night, because we just sat there and laughed and did something fun together, and that's kind of how I love to wrap up my day.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've got better in recent years of having those moments where I just sort of look at what's happening in the moment when I'm spending time with Ellie, and sort of appreciating the fact that I'm doing that, whether that be colouring, although I haven't done that for a long time. Maybe I should do that. Or any of the other things. Lovely. So thank you so much, Gabriella. It's been great speaking to you. Tell people how they can find out more about you and how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. Easiest way is just Gabriella@themogulmom.com, and I'm pretty much always on my email, so I'm happy to chat with you. On Instagram, I'm the Explorator, so I put a lot of my travels up there, which are a lot of fun, my funny finds that I find in different parts of the world. And I'd love to chat with anybody. So reach out.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gabriella.
Thanks so much.
All this information is available in the show notes, which you can get to if you use the link powertolivemore.com / in this case 119. The last couple of weeks I've been talking about my new membership site and about the 4 sections that are within it. The community, accountability, and this week I'm going to talk about learning, and next week I'll talk about the materials. So the learning section is basically about providing mini courses, and sometimes not so many, in areas and with topics and learning that is relevant to home-based coaches and consultants, based around the categories of my 5 fundamentals, which are simplify, systemize, share, self-care and sustain, but also around things like audience building and other courses for people to use some of the tools within the community as well. So all the sorts of things that you would use or need, that you do use and need as a home-based coach or consultant. So the courses that are currently on the site ready for launch are Habitual Happiness, all about creating regular habits that help you to be happy and maintain that happiness. Organising your home office for maximum productivity, so that's in the Systemize section to help you think about how you get set up with your home office. The self-care section has preventing and coping with burnout currently. In the share section there's a course about outsourcing, so if that's something that you've been thinking about doing, there's some resource there for you, some learning there. In the audience building there's a course about Facebook advertising. And in the simplify section there's quite a number. There's having fun with vision boards. There's your best 12 months ever starting now. So that's something that enables you to have a think about your last 12 months and plan forwards for your next 12 months. And it doesn't have to be a January thing or a September thing. It can be any time of the year. It's just 12 months from whenever you do it. There's also one called How to Start to Simplify Your Life. So that talks about thinking about your purpose, your values, some self-awareness and some work around how you want your life to be moving forwards. There's also another course about simplifying and decluttering your life. So if that's something that you're thinking about doing, then that might be useful to you. And then there's a couple of courses to explain how to use resources within the community. One of them is about using the Habit Share app, which I talked about last week, which we use for accountability. And another one is how to use Slack within the community. And obviously that will be helpful if you're using Slack elsewhere, not just within the community here, but it obviously will get you kicked off if you know nothing about it and aren't going to use it anywhere else. And then there's also a mini course about my introduction to living more, and that's around my 5 fundamentals that I've already talked about of simplifying, sustaining, share, self-care, and I've just done it in the wrong order. Start again. Simplify, systemize, share, self-care and sustain. So there's a ton of content in there currently, and that's just to get us kicked off when I launch the site. Moving forwards, I'll be regularly adding content, as I say, across all of those 5 fundamentals, but also around things like audience building, and other useful topics for home-based business owners or home-based coaches and consultants specifically. The way that the courses are put together, they're very interactive. There's a real focus on taking action. I know quite often we learn things by reading books or just by following something, watching a video, and then we don't really ever put it into practice. And it's really key from all the work that I do facilitating groups to learn via workshops and so on. I know how important it is to take action, to actually practically do something as a result of what you're learning, so that it really helps to embed the learning, but also kicks you off on to doing things differently as a result of having had the learning. There's no point learning things and carrying on your merry way the way that you ever did before. So there is a real focus on taking action, and so the courses are divided up into teaching content and then also into action content. So that's the things where you need to actually do something, and there's lots of connections back from the courses to Slack, to the community, so that when you've done something, it will ask you what you've done and ask you to go into the community and share that with other people who've taken the same course, so that you can have some conversation with those people, but also that gives you a level of accountability to encourage you to take that action and then go and sort of report back on it, if you like, to your fellow course takers. I don't know if that's a technical term. So yeah, real focus on taking action and doing something differently as a result of the learning. And as you can tell from the list that I just gave you, there's a ton of stuff there. You don't obviously have to do all of it, but you can dip in and out and do the things that you need at any given time. And then if there's anything you want that I don't yet provide, then always let me know, because I'm constantly providing new courses to go in that section. So obviously it'd be much better for me to be producing courses that you're asking for than ones that I just decide I think you need. But obviously a lot of what's come out of the courses, the topics at the moment are it's as a result of the feedback that I got from the survey that I did earlier in the year about the things that people are struggling with. And so some of the other courses that I'm thinking about that will be added will be around focus, email management, maybe inbox zero, that sort of thing. And what's the other one? Not outsourcing, systemization generally. So how you can create systems and processes and what technology you can use for that and so on. And then there's also an audience building one. I think there's something about Instagram, and there'll be things like email marketing and stuff about using WordPress for your website as well, because that's something that I used to teach in the past and I know will be useful to some of you as well. So tons of content in there currently, tons more coming, and obviously, as I say, very open to suggestions for content that you'd really appreciate in terms of your learning journey. So that's the course section of Power to Live More Calm. That's the learning section, should I say. That's the L in calm. Next week, I'll talk to you about the materials, which is the section that's got lots of templates and resources that you can download and use so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel to do the things that you need to do. So I'll be talking about that, as I say, next week. Again, the show notes for this week's show are at powertolivemore.com/119, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.